7 days earlier, the assignment came at 0300 on a Tuesday morning. Bryn Castellano was running a solo training exercise at the Naval Amphibious Base when her secure phone buzzed against her hip. She stopped mid-stride, breath steady despite the 6 miles already behind her, and read the encrypted message. Camp Ridgeline, deep infiltration undercover. Report to Commander Thatcher, 0600. Camp Ridgeline. Her jaw tightened. Everyone in Special Operations knew that name. The training facility that chewed people up and buried the bones. 3 soldiers dead in 18 months. 2 women. 1 male whistleblower who tried to report what was happening to the women. All 3 ruled training accidents. All 3 investigations killed before the ink dried. Nobody talked about Ridgeline out loud, but everybody whispered about it. She walked into Commander Diane Thatcher's office with 4 minutes to spare. Thatcher was 54 years old, silver-streaked hair pulled tight, and the kind of eyes that had stared into darkness so many times the darkness started staring back. She had recruited Bryn personally 3 years ago, had watched her survive BUDS training when every instructor said it couldn't be done, had seen steel hiding beneath a quiet 21-year-old kid from Miami that nobody else bothered to look for. Sit down, Castellano. Bryn sat.
You've read the file on Camp Ridgeline?
Yes, ma'am. 3 deaths, 14 harassment complaints, all buried. What you haven't read is the classified addendum. Thatcher slid a folder across the desk. Her fingers lingered on it a beat too long, like she didn't want to let go of what was inside. Private Audrey Brennan, 23 years old, assigned to Ridgeline 9 months ago. Bryn opened the folder. A young woman's face stared up at her. Dark eyes, soft smile. The kind of face that joined the military believing the uniform meant something, believing the system would protect her. She filed a formal complaint against Sergeant First Class Dominic Harker. 3 days later, she was discharged on psychological grounds. They erased her from every record. As far as the official file goes, Audrey Brennan was never at Camp Ridgeline. Bryn stared at the photograph. 23 years old, hopeful smile, erased. What do you need me to do? Infiltrate, observe, document everything. Thatcher leaned forward and her voice dropped half a register. Harker has connections, Bryn. His uncle is retired Colonel Franklin Gage. The man has friends at the Pentagon, friends on oversight committees, friends who make phone calls that shut down investigations before breakfast. Every complaint that's ever been filed against Harker has vanished into thin air. You need evidence that can't be buried, evidence so clean and so devastating that no amount of political muscle can make it disappear. Thatcher paused. The professional mask she wore like body armor cracked for just a moment. I know what I'm asking. I know exactly what they'll do to you in there. And I know what kind of man Harker is. Why me? The question landed heavy. Thatcher was quiet for a long time, the kind of silence that has weight to it, the kind that fills a room and presses against the walls. Because you know what it's like to scream and have nobody listen, she said finally. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You know what it feels like to beg for help and watch every adult in the room look the other way. And you know better than anyone I've ever trained how to take that silence and turn it into a weapon. The words went straight through Bryn's armor. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, but behind her eyes something shifted. Miami, the group home on 37th Street, 14 years old, the laundry room, the hand over her mouth, the social worker's office afterward, where a woman in a gray suit looked at her like she was an inconvenience and said, "Are you sure you're not exaggerating, honey?" Nobody came then. Nobody came for Audrey. But that was exactly the point. Thatcher opened another drawer, pulled out what looked like standard issue gear, dog tags, uniform patches, a worn duffel bag. This device, she tapped a small black rectangle no bigger than a quarter, is virtually undetectable. It's embedded in your standard issue gear. Everything you see, Everything you hear streams in real time to a secure NCIS server. And if they find it, they won't. But if something goes wrong, you say the word and we pull you out immediately. No questions. Thatcher met her eyes and held them. Understand? Understood, ma'am. Thatcher stood. Bryn stood. And for just a breath, one single breath, the commander's mask fell away completely. Be careful, Bryn. Harker has been perfecting this for years. He knows exactly how to break a person. He knows where the cracks are before you do. Don't let him find yours. Bryn's face was stone. Her voice was steady. He won't break me. How can you be sure? Bryn held her gaze. Because I've already been broken, ma'am, and I learned how to put myself back together. Men like Harker don't scare me.
They remind me why I fight.
Thatcher said nothing, but something moved behind her eyes that might have been respect or fear or both. She arrived at Camp Ridgeline at 0800 carrying a duffel bag that contained a lie. Specialist Lena Reyes, transferred from a supply depot in Georgia. No combat experience, no special training, no threat to anyone. The kind of soldier that predators smelled from across a room and started circling before she even set her bag down. She dressed the part deliberately. Tight olive green V-neck t-shirt that made her look small, military camo pants, worn boots, long dark brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No edge, no toughness, just a nervous newcomer hoping to survive her first real assignment. The moment she stepped through the main entrance, every conversation in the building died. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward her, scanning, measuring, dismissing. Name and orders. The sergeant at the check-in desk didn't bother looking up. Reyes, specialist, transfer from supply. He typed, frowned. Alpha rotation, Bay 4. He jerked his thumb down the hall. That way, try not to get lost. Thank you, Sergeant. He was already looking at his screen. She was already forgotten. Bay 4, 18 bunks. 16 of them occupied by men who stopped talking the instant she walked through the door. Fresh meat. Here we go again. $20 as she cries before lights out. Bryn found the empty bunk in the corner, farthest from the door, nearest the latrine. Isolated from every other bed in the room, she knew exactly what that placement meant. It was the spot they gave to people they intended to destroy first. She set down her bag, started unpacking. Well, well, well. The voice came from behind her, loud, deliberate, pitched so every man in the bay could hear it clearly. Bryn turned slowly. Dominic Harker stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was everything the file promised. 36 years old, 6'1", 210, nose broken at least twice, healed crooked both times. Knuckles scarred white from years of hitting things that couldn't hit back. They're sending us beauty queens now. He walked into the bay like he owned every molecule of air in it. Somebody at command must think this is real funny. This is combat training, sweetheart, not a spa day. Laughter rolled through the room like a wave. Bryn kept her voice small, uncertain, exactly what he expected to hear. I'm just here to train, Sergeant. Train? Harker moved toward her, each step slow, predatory, the walk of a man who had cornered enough prey to enjoy the approach as much as the kill. He stopped inches from her face, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, see the cruelty sitting behind his pupils like a living thing. You think you can train with us? Look at you. A strong breeze would snap you in half. What's your name? Reyes, Sergeant. Reyes. He made it sound like something he'd scraped off his boot. Let me explain how this works, Reyes. I decide who belongs here. I decide who stays. I decide who breaks. And right now, he leaned in closer, I'm deciding you don't belong. Bryn said nothing. Her orders were branded into her brain. Observe, endure, do not reveal. Nothing to say? Harker tilted his head. No fire? No fight? Nothing at all? I'm just here to do my job, Sergeant. Your job? He laughed. Short, sharp, the kind of laugh that was really a threat wearing a disguise. Your job is whatever I say it is. And right now your job is to scrub every latrine in this building. With a toothbrush. He paused, smiled wider. Yours specifically. The bay erupted. Yes, Sergeant. Harker blinked. He'd expected tears, resistance, something to feed on. Compliance threw him off rhythm for exactly half a second. Then the mask snapped back into place. Get to it, Reyes. When you're done, report back. I'll find more for you. He turned and walked out, his crew trailing behind him like dogs following the Alpha. The bay went back to its low hum of conversation, but Bryn could feel the eyes still crawling on her skin, watching, waiting, placing bets on how long she'd last. She picked up her toothbrush and headed for the latrines. The recorder had already been running for 47 minutes. The first 3 days were a textbook escalation pattern. Bryn had studied these tactics, had written papers on them during advanced training. Now she was living inside one. Day 1. Sand packed into her rifle at night. It jammed during morning drills. Harker screamed at her for 6 straight minutes in front of the entire unit, called her incompetent, called her a waste of oxygen, called her things that the recorder captured in perfect, digital clarity. She fixed the rifle, improved her scores the next round. Day 2, her food disappeared. Every single meal. Someone's elbow would catch her tray. Someone's boot would kick her water bottle across the floor. Sorry, Reyes, didn't see you there. Laughter. Always laughter. She ate what she could grab, stayed hydrated from canteens she kept hidden in her bunk. Day 3, sleep deprivation. 3 a.m. wake-up calls. Surprise inspections that only targeted her bunk. Her sheets torn off, her gear scattered. Harker standing over her in the dark with a flashlight aimed at her eyes. Rise and shine, Reyes. You think the enemy lets you sleep? No, Sergeant. Then why should I? She stopped sleeping in full cycles, shifted to the combat nap pattern she'd learned in buds. 20 minutes on, 40 off. Her body adjusted automatically. Her mind stayed sharp. Through all of it, every sabotage, every stolen meal, every 3 a.m. humiliation, the recorder captured everything. On the 4th day, Harker escalated. Bryn was running the obstacle course when she spotted it. The rope, 3rd station, high climb, cut 90% through, fraying fibers barely holding together, invisible to anyone who wasn't trained to see sabotage before it killed them. A fall from that height would shatter bones, end a career, maybe end a life. She had 2 seconds to decide. Avoid the rope and reveal that she had the trained eye of a special operator, or take the fall and stay in cover. She grabbed the rope. It snapped at the 12-foot mark. She went down, but she controlled it, a SEAL technique that converted a bone-shattering impact into a rolling tumble. She hit the ground hard, tumbled twice, came up on her feet, bruised, scraped, intact. Harker was watching from below. She caught the frustration that flashed across his face before he could hide it. She was supposed to be broken. She was supposed to be screaming. Clumsy, Reyes. Very clumsy. Yes, Sergeant, I'll do better. Better? His eyes narrowed. You'll do the course again, right now. She did it again. And again. And again. 5 times total. By the 5th run, her arms were shaking so badly she could barely grip the replacement rope. Her legs felt like they were filled with wet sand. When she finally finished, Harker was waiting at the end. Arms crossed, head tilted, studying her like a specimen under glass. You know what your problem is, Reyes? No, Sergeant. You don't know when to quit. Most people, they hit a wall, they stop. They recognize when they're beaten. They accept it. But you, he stepped closer. His voice dropped to something almost intimate, almost curious. You just keep going, like something inside you won't let you stop. I'm just trying to complete the training, Sergeant. No. His voice went cold, flat. You're trying to survive. And that's interesting to me, because in my experience, Reyes, most people who come to this place trying to survive, he held her eyes. They don't. He walked away. Bryn watched him go and filed the words under the category she reserved for threats that men thought were too subtle to be recorded. They weren't. On the fifth day, she met Ethan Caldwell. He was 25, private first class, 8 months at Ridgeline. He had the hollowed-out look of a man carrying something heavy inside his chest that he couldn't put down and couldn't talk about. He waited until the bay was empty, until every set of ears was elsewhere. Then he appeared at her bunk like a ghost. "You need to leave." Bryn looked at him. "Why?" "Because what Harker is doing to you isn't hazing." Caldwell's voice was barely audible. His eyes kept moving, checking the door, the windows, the shadows, always checking. "He's building towards something. This is a pattern. I've seen it before." "What kind of pattern?" "The last woman assigned here," Caldwell swallowed hard. "Her name was Audrey. She was 23, smart, tough, believed in the mission. She thought she could handle Harker. Thought if she just kept her head down, followed orders, didn't make trouble, didn't give him anything to—" His voice broke. "What happened to her?" "They broke her." The words came out cracked, splintered. "Harker and his crew, Garrett Beckett especially, they cornered her, made her life so miserable she stopped eating, stopped sleeping, started flinching at every sound. And when she finally tried to fight back, tried to put in a complaint through channels, he stopped, couldn't continue." "They what, Caldwell?" "They made her disappear." His hands were shaking. He pressed them against his thighs to make them stop. It didn't work. Transfer orders showed up overnight. Medical discharge, psychological instability. One day she was here, next day she was gone. No forwarding address, no contact information. Her file was sealed. Her name was scrubbed from every record like she was never born. "Did you try to find her?" "For weeks." Caldwell's eyes went red. "Nobody would tell me anything. Her phone was disconnected. Her email bounced. I wrote to her emergency contact, her mother. The letter came back unopened." He looked at the floor. "She just vanished. They erased her from the world, and nobody said a word about it. Nobody asked where she went. Nobody cared." "You cared." "Not enough." Caldwell's voice was barely a whisper. "Not when it mattered." "Why are you telling me this?" He looked at her, then really looked. Not at her cover, not at the supply clerk disguise, at her. And Bryn saw something in his eyes she recognized on a molecular level. Guilt. The kind that doesn't fade. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone and gets heavier every morning you wake up and do nothing about it. "Because I was too scared to help her," Caldwell said. A tear ran down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. "I watched what they did to Audrey. I heard her crying at night. I saw the bruises she tried to hide. And I said nothing, did nothing, because I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, they'd do it to me too." His voice cracked open. "I can't be that person again. I won't." Bryn studied him for a long moment, every instinct evaluating, every sensor running. "What's your name?" "Caldwell. Ethan Caldwell." "Okay, Caldwell. You want to help? Really help?" "Yes." "Then I need you to do exactly what I say. Watch everything. Listen to everything. Remember every detail. Who said what, when, where, who was present." Her voice dropped low, controlled, intense. "Write nothing down. Keep nothing on your phone. Store it all here." She tapped her temple. "When this is over, there's going to be an investigation. A real one. Not the kind that gets shut down by a phone call. And I am going to need witnesses." Caldwell stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of something that might have been hope. "How do you know there's going to be an investigation?" Bryn almost smiled. The first time in 5 days anything close to a smile had touched her face. Because I'm going to make sure of it. On the sixth day, Garrett Beckett found her alone. He was Harker's right hand, 31 years old, dead eyes, the kind of man who enjoyed cruelty the way some people enjoyed morning coffee. Reflexively, daily, without a single molecule of guilt. He specialized in the quiet kind of destruction, the whispered threats, the too close proximity, the promises delivered so softly that no one standing 3 feet away could hear them. Reyes. He materialized in the hallway between the latrines and Bay 4, blocking her path, standing too close, so close she could feel body heat radiating off him like a furnace. You and I need to have a conversation. About what, Sergeant? About your future at this facility. Beckett smiled, but it stopped at his mouth. His eyes stayed dead, flat, like two holes punched in a mask. See, Harker thinks you're about done. Another week of this, maybe 2, and you'll be on your knees begging for a transfer, crying on the phone to somebody who cares. And what do you think? I think different. He stepped closer. His breath was hot against her neck. I think you're tougher than you look, Reyes. I think maybe there's some fight hidden in there somewhere, some fire. I'm just here to train, Sergeant. Yeah, I heard that line. Beckett's voice dropped to a whisper, low enough that only she could hear, low enough that if she ever tried to repeat it, it would be her word against his. But here's the thing. There are other ways to earn your place here, ways that don't involve running obstacle courses, ways that are a whole lot easier. Bryn's blood went cold. I'm not sure I understand, Sergeant. I think you do. His fingers brushed her arm. Light, deliberate, a test. I think you understand exactly what I'm offering, and I think if you're smart, really smart, you'll figure out that playing along is a whole lot less painful than fighting. Every instinct in Bryn's body screamed at her to break his wrist, to fold his arm backward until the shoulders separated, to put him on the ground and show him exactly what happened to men who put their hands on women who didn't invite it. But the mission needed evidence. The mission needed patience. The mission needed predators to reveal exactly what they were while a camera was rolling. I'll keep that in mind, Sergeant, Beckett laughed, soft, confident. The laugh of a man who believed he just won something. Smart girl. We'll talk again real soon. He walked away. Bryn stood motionless in the hallway. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, from the effort it took to keep them at her sides instead of wrapped around his throat. The recorder had captured every word, every breath, every whisper. That night she lay on her bunk while 16 men snored around her, staring at the ceiling. The bruises from the obstacle course throbbed in time with her heartbeat. She thought about Audrey Brennan, 23, hopeful smile, filed a complaint because she believed the system worked, and the system swallowed her whole. She thought about the 2 women who died at Ridgeline. Training accidents. That's what the official report said. Training accidents. She thought about their mothers. The phone calls that destroyed 2 families in the time it took to say 4 words. Your daughter is dead. She thought about herself at 14. The laundry room. The hand over her mouth. The social worker's office afterward, where a woman in a gray suit looked at her like she was an inconvenience and said, "Are you sure you're not exaggerating, honey?" Nobody came then. Nobody came for Audrey. Nobody came for the women who died. But that was exactly the point. That was the whole reason she was lying on this bunk in this place, letting these men believe she was something she wasn't. Because Bryn Castellano had decided a long time ago, in a laundry room in Miami with a hand over her mouth and tears running sideways into her ears, that if nobody was coming, she would become the person who came for everyone else. On the 7th day, Harker decided to end it. Bryn was in the training bay, running through a standard drill when she heard the boots. Multiple sets. 6 men moving in formation, moving with intent. She didn't turn around, didn't need to. She could read the rhythm of boots on concrete the way a pianist reads sheet music. Reyes, Harker's voice echoed through the bay, flat, final. The voice of a man about to do what he'd done many times before. "We need to talk." Bryn set down her equipment, turned slowly. Harker stood with 5 men fanned out behind him. Garrett Beckett on his right, smiling that dead smile. Tony Vega, Harker's enforcer, 6'3", 220, built like a concrete wall, on his left. 3 others filling the gaps like pieces of a trap snapping into place. "I've been watching you all week, Reyes." Harker walked toward her, slow. "Watching you take everything we throw at you without a word. No complaints, no tears, nothing." He stopped, tilted his head. "Most people crack by day 3. You haven't cracked at all. That bothers me. I'm just trying to complete my—" "Stop." He held up one hand. "I've heard that sentence every day for 7 days. I'm done hearing it." He stepped closer. "You're hiding something. I can feel it. And I don't like people who hide things in my facility." "I'm not hiding anything, Sergeant." "No?" Harker started circling her slowly, the way something with teeth circles something without. "Then why don't you shower when anybody else is around? Why do you check your gear 3 times before every drill when a supply clerk shouldn't know to check it once? Why does Beckett tell me you didn't flinch when he got close to you yesterday?" Bryn said nothing. "You know what I think, Reyes?" He completed the circle, stopped directly in front of her. "I think you've been hurt before. I think somewhere in your boring little background, something happened that taught you how to eat pain without making a sound. Something bad." Bryn's heart hammered. Not from fear, because he was right, and that made him dangerous. "I think whatever it was," Harker continued, his voice dropping to something almost gentle, almost concerned, which made it infinitely worse. "You came here thinking you could disappear, thinking if you just kept your head down and followed orders, nobody would ever touch you again." His smile returned. Patient, practiced, the smile of a man who had rehearsed this moment on a dozen other women. "But here's the thing about hiding, sweetheart. I always find what people hide. Always. I don't want trouble, Sergeant." "Trouble?" Harker laughed, sharp, short, like something snapping. "Trouble found you the moment you walked through my door." He shoved her hard, both hands on her shoulders. Bryn stumbled back, caught her balance, didn't retaliate. "That's what I thought." He shoved again, harder. Pathetic. She went down to one knee, rose again, slowly, deliberately. "You don't belong here," Vega called from behind. "This ain't charity." Another shove. She hit the ground completely, palms slapping concrete, pain shooting through her wrists. She pushed herself up, brushed the dust off her pants. Her jaw was clenched so tight she could hear her own teeth grinding. Not from fear, from restraint. From the extraordinary discipline required to be the most dangerous person in a room and act like the weakest. Harker leaned in close, close enough that his lips almost touched her ear, close enough that the words were only for her. "Get lost, new girl." Then the kick came, fast, brutal, aimed at her ribs. She rolled with it, absorbed most of the impact using core techniques drilled into her during 100 SEAL training sessions. But the force still drove every molecule of air from her lungs. Before she could recover, before she could even inhale, the second kick connected with her face. The world exploded. White light, blinding pain, something cracking inside her skull. She hit concrete and the taste of iron flooded everything. Blood poured from her mouth. She felt something small and hard bounce off her lip and skitter across the floor. Her tooth, rolling away from her like it was trying to escape what was happening. Laughter, distant, echoing, like hearing it from underwater. That's what happens to people who don't know their place. Harker's voice, satisfied, final. Bryn lay on the concrete, blood pooling beneath her cheek. Her front tooth was gone. Another was loose. Her orbital bone felt like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. But through the pain, through the ringing in her ears, through the taste of iron, through the blurring in her left eye, she heard a voice. Not Harker's, Commander Thatcher's. Clear, calm, playing back from memory like a recording. Do not reveal your identity unless absolutely necessary. Harker had just kicked her in the face in front of 5 witnesses. On camera, streaming live to an NCIS server. He had just made it absolutely necessary. Bryn pressed her palms flat against the bloody concrete, and slowly, painfully, she began to push herself up. Harker stood over her, grinning, triumphant, riding the high that men like him got from breaking things smaller than themselves, waiting for the tears, for the begging, for the moment every victim collapsed. Had enough, Reyes? Blood dripped from Bryn's chin. She spat out a fragment of tooth. It landed on the concrete between them like a period at the end of a sentence. She raised her head, met his eyes, and what Dominic Harker saw in those eyes made his grin falter. Because the woman looking up at him wasn't afraid, wasn't broken, wasn't a supply clerk from Georgia who'd wandered into the wrong building. The woman looking up at him was something he had never encountered in his entire career of breaking people. She was something that had been waiting for this exact moment. "My name," she said, and her voice was steady as a flatline, "isn't Reyes." Harker blinked. "My name is Bryn Castellano, Petty Officer 2nd Class, United States Navy SEALs." She rose to her full height, and as she stood, something transformed. The posture shifted, the shoulders squared, the chin lifted. The frightened newcomer dissolved like smoke, and what emerged from underneath was something made of steel and silence and years of training designed to produce exactly one thing, a weapon that looked human. Black belt Krav Maga, black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, expert marksman, combat veteran, 3 deployments to Afghanistan and Syria, Bronze Star with Valor device. The bay went dead silent. Not quiet, dead. The kind of silence that has a sound. The sound of 12 men simultaneously realizing they had made a catastrophic mistake. "And you just assaulted me in front of multiple witnesses while being recorded by a device that has been streaming every conversation, every threat, every single thing that's happened in this facility to a secure NCIS server for the past 7 days." Harker's face went white, not pale, white, like someone had reached inside him and pulled a plug. That's impossible," his voice cracked. "There are no female SEALs." "There are now." Bryn wiped blood from her chin with the back of her hand, slowly, almost casually. "And there's something else you should know, Sergeant." "What?" "I was ordered not to fight back unless I had no other choice." She shifted her weight, just slightly, a fraction of an inch. And every man in the room tensed simultaneously, a primal, involuntary reaction. The reaction of prey animals detecting a predator they hadn't known was among them. "You just gave me a choice." Harker's laugh was sharp, desperate, high-pitched. The laugh of a man trying to convince a room, trying to convince himself that the ground hadn't just opened beneath his feet. Navy SEAL. He looked around at his men, searching their faces for backup, for someone to tell him this was a bluff. "Her? This is garbage. She's lying. She's—" "Check my records," Bryn said. Her voice cut through his like a blade through paper. "Bryn Castellano, BUDS Class 347, first female graduate." Or call Commander Diane Thatcher at NCIS Special Operations. She'll confirm everything. She took one step forward. Harker took one step back. "Or," she said quietly, "you can keep talking and give me more time to decide how many of your bones I'm going to break." The silence that followed was the loudest sound any of them had ever heard. Garrett Beckett was the first to move. He stepped forward, fists clenched, jaw set. The enforcer doing what enforcers do, trying to solve with violence what couldn't be solved any other way. "I don't care who she says she is," he cracked his knuckles. "She's one woman. There are 6 of us." Bryn looked at him. The man who'd cornered her in the hallway, the man who'd brushed his fingers along her arm and whispered about easier ways. She looked at him the way she looked at targets through a rifle scope. Then I'll be done in 30 seconds instead of 10. Beckett charged. It was the last mistake he'd ever make standing up. Bryn sidestepped Beckett's wild swing like it was moving in slow motion. She caught his arm at the wrist, redirected his momentum, used his own 200 pounds of forward motion to drive him face first into the concrete floor. The crack of his nose breaking echoed through the bay like a gunshot. Before he could scream, she had his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that made every man in the room flinch. "That's one," she said quietly. Two more rushed her simultaneously. The first threw a haymaker from her left. The second came low, reaching for her legs, trying to take her down with a tackle. Bryn released Beckett, pivoted on her back foot, ducked under the haymaker, drove her elbow into the second attacker's solar plexus. He folded in half like a lawn chair. The first man tried to grab her from behind. She dropped her center of gravity, caught his arm, threw him over her hip. He landed flat on his back with enough force to empty his lungs entirely. He lay there gasping like a fish on a dock. That's three. Tony Vega came next, and Vega was different. Vega had actual training behind his movements. He didn't rush, he didn't swing wild. He stepped in controlled, threw a three-punch combination: jab, cross, hook. That would have dropped most people on the first strike. Bryn blocked the jab, slipped the cross, let the hook graze her shoulder. Then she stepped inside his guard, past his fists, into the dead space where his reach couldn't help him, and delivered a precise palm strike to the center of his chest. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to short-circuit his nervous system for half a second. Vega's eyes went wide, then blank. His legs folded. He dropped straight down like God had cut his strings. 4. The two remaining men looked at each other, then at Harker, then at the four bodies groaning on the concrete around a woman who wasn't even breathing hard. Neither of them moved. Neither of them wanted to be number 5. Bryn turned to Harker. "Your turn." Harker's face had gone from white to gray. His hands were shaking. Sweat had broken out across his forehead in a slick, greasy film. For the first time in his career, maybe the first time in his life, Dominic Harker was standing in front of someone he couldn't intimidate, couldn't bully, couldn't overpower, couldn't destroy. This is assault." His voice was thin, ready, nothing like the booming authority he'd used all week. "You attacked my men. They attacked me first. I defended myself." Bryn took one step toward him. Harker backed up, physically backed away from a woman he'd kicked in the face 20 minutes ago. "That's 4 counts of assault on your personnel, caught on camera, plus 7 days of systematic harassment, sabotage of military equipment, threats of sexual violence from your staff sergeant." She paused. "Plus whatever you did to Audrey Brennan." The name hit Harker like a slap. His whole body flinched. "Yeah," Bryn's voice dropped low. "I know about Audrey. I know what you did to her. I know how you made her disappear. And I know that when NCIS starts pulling this thread, they're going to find a lot more than one victim. You can't prove." "I don't have to prove anything." Bryn pulled out her phone, turned the screen toward him. The live feed was right there, streaming in real time to the NCIS server. 7 days of footage, every conversation, every threat, every kicked tray and sabotaged rope, and 3 a.m. inspection and whispered promise in a dark hallway. Harker stared at the screen, and Bryn watched something happen that she had waited 7 days to see. She watched a man realize, in real time, in front of witnesses, that his career was over, that his freedom was over, that the life he'd built on the backs of broken women had just collapsed. "My uncle," his voice was barely a whisper. "My uncle will—" "Your uncle is being visited by federal agents right now." Bryn's voice was ice. "Did you really think NCIS would send me in alone? Without a plan? Without backup? Your uncle's connections can't save you this time, Dominic. Nothing can." The doors to the training bay exploded open. Military police flooded in. 8 of them, weapons drawn, body armor.
The real thing.
Behind them, walking with the calm, measured authority of a woman who had been waiting for exactly this moment for months, Commander Diane Thatcher entered the bay. Sergeant First Class Dominic Harker. Thatcher's voice carried through the room like a verdict. You are under arrest for assault, criminal harassment, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Harker's legs gave out. Not dramatically, not like a movie. They simply stopped working. He sank to his knees on the concrete, and the sound his kneecaps made hitting the floor was small and pathetic and final. You set me up, he whispered. Bryn crouched down, met his eyes at his level, blood still on her chin, gap still in her teeth, bruise already swelling purple across her cheekbone. No, Dominic, you set yourself up. Every single day for years, you set yourself up. I just made sure somebody was finally watching. 2 MPs hauled him to his feet, cuffed his hands behind his back, started walking him toward the door. Halfway there, Harker twisted around for one last look at her. This isn't over, he hissed. Bryn wiped the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. You're right, it's just beginning. They took Beckett next, then Vega, then the others, one by one, in handcuffs, heads down, through a door that led to a world where their rank couldn't protect them and their connections couldn't make phone calls fast enough. The bay emptied out. The laughter that had echoed off these walls for years went silent. Ethan Caldwell stood in the corner. He hadn't moved during any of it. His face was wet. His mouth was open. He looked like a man watching a miracle he'd stopped believing was possible. Bryn caught his eye. You okay, Caldwell? He couldn't speak. He just nodded. And then he did something that broke the last piece of composure Bryn had been holding together. He mouthed 2 words. Thank you. The medical team arrived 20 minutes later. Bryn sat on a bench while a corpsman cataloged the damage. 1 tooth gone, another cracked, significant swelling across the left cheekbone, possible hairline fracture of the orbital bone, bruised ribs, abraded palms, multiple contusions across her arms and torso, consistent with 7 days of sustained physical abuse. Thatcher stood nearby, watching the examination with her arms crossed and her jaw tight. You should have been extracted days ago. I needed more evidence. You needed to not get your face kicked in. Bryn almost smiled, stopped when the movement pulled at her swollen cheek. It was worth it. We got everything. Harker, Beckett, Vega, the whole operation. 7 days of continuous footage plus whatever connects back to the previous victims. About that, Thatcher pulled up a chair, sat down, and the look on her face told Bryn this conversation was about to get worse. NCIS has been coordinating with investigators at 3 other facilities while you were inside. Harker isn't an isolated case. How bad? Thatcher's voice was flat, controlled. The voice of someone delivering news they'd been carrying too long. We've identified 14 women who were targeted by Harker or people directly connected to him over the past 5 years. 14 women, Bryn. Same pattern every time. Harassment, escalation, assault, then silence. Complaints buried, files scrubbed, victims transferred or discharged before they could talk. How many are dead? Thatcher was quiet for a beat. 2. Bryn closed her eyes. 2 women, 2 lives, 2 families that got a phone call and a lie. I want their names. Bryn, I want their names, Commander. Thatcher studied her for a moment. Then she nodded. Specialist Maria Santos, 26, ruled a training accident 11 months ago. The evidence never added up. And Private First Class Rachel Newman, 22. Thatcher paused. 8 months ago. Official cause, suicide. But the toxicology report showed irregularities that were never investigated because someone shut down the investigation before it started. Bryn opened her eyes. The pain in her face was nothing compared to what was building in her chest. 2 women dead, 14 lives destroyed, and one man, with his uncle's phone calls and his network of enablers, had operated for years in broad daylight while the system looked the other way. "I want to talk to the survivors," Bryn said. "That's not part of the—" "I want to talk to them, Commander. The ones who are still alive. The ones who were silenced. I want to look them in the eye and tell them it's over. That somebody finally believed them." "Why?" The question was quiet, genuine. Bryn touched her swollen jaw, felt the gap where her tooth had been, felt the ache spreading through the entire left side of her face. And behind that ache, deeper, older, permanent, she felt the 14-year-old girl in the laundry room in Miami, the one who screamed and nobody came. "Because someone should have done that for me," she said, "and nobody did." Thatcher held her gaze for a long time. Then she nodded once. "I'll make the calls." It took 3 days to find Audrey Brennan. She had changed her name, moved across the country, deleted every trace of her military service, canceled her phone, closed her email, dropped off social media entirely. She was living under a false identity in a small town in Montana, working at an animal shelter, trying to convince herself that the past 18 months had been a nightmare she'd finally woken up from. Bryn called her on a Tuesday evening. The phone rang 6 times, 7, 8. "Hello?" The voice was barely audible, cautious, the voice of someone who had learned to be afraid of ringing phones. "My name is Bryn Castellano. I'm a Navy SEAL. I just came from Camp Ridgeline." Silence. Complete and total silence. Bryn could hear breathing on the other end. Fast, shallow. The breathing of someone whose body had just flooded with adrenaline. "How?" Audrey's voice cracked. "How did you find me?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that Dominic Harker is in custody. He's been arrested. He's going to prison, Audrey." More silence. Then a sound that could have been a gasp or a sob or both. "Audrey, are you still there?" "I'm here," barely a whisper. I never thought—" She couldn't finish. I know it feels impossible, but it's real. He's in handcuffs. His whole crew, Beckett, Vega, all of them. They are never going to hurt anyone again." "You don't understand." The words started tumbling out, fast, frantic, like they'd been locked in a box for 18 months and the lid had just blown off. "I tried to report it. I went through channels. I did everything they tell you to do. I filed the paperwork. I talked to the investigator. I gave them everything. And they made me look crazy. They said I was unstable. They said I was lying. They said I was a problem soldier looking for attention." Her voice cracked wide open. "They took everything from me. My career, my identity, my name. They took my name, Bryn. I can't even use my own name anymore because I'm so afraid they'll find me." "They won't find you. It's over." "Is it?" Audrey's voice sharpened, hardened. The voice of someone who had been promised safety before and discovered it was another lie. "Because that's what they told me when they discharged me. They said it was over. They said I should move on. They said I should be grateful they didn't press charges against me for filing a false report. It's different this time." "How? How is it different?" "Because this time there are 14 of you." Bryn's voice was firm, steady, the anchor that Audrey needed, even if she didn't know it yet. 14 women that Harker and his network targeted. We have evidence, Audrey, real evidence. 7 days of recorded footage, documented harassment, documented assault. The kind of evidence that doesn't disappear with a phone call. 14. Audrey's voice went hollow. He did this to 14 people. At least, probably more. Oh God. The crying started then. Not quiet crying. The deep, racking, body-shaking kind that comes from a place so far down you didn't even know it existed until someone cracked it open. "I thought it was just me," Audrey said through the tears. I thought I was the only one who couldn't handle it. I thought there was something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Bryn's hand pressed against her own swollen jaw. The ache grounded her, kept her voice from breaking. You weren't weak, Audrey. You were targeted by a predator who had been perfecting his methods for years. The fact that you survived, the fact that you're alive, that you're standing, that you answered this phone, that is proof of how strong you are. I don't feel strong. I know, but you are. Silence stretched across the line, long seconds that felt like minutes. Audrey, I need to ask you something hard.
What?
Will you testify? The silence this time was different, heavier, loaded with everything Audrey had spent 18 months running from. I'm scared. The words were so quiet Bryn almost missed them. I know. I was scared too. Bryn's fingers found the gap in her teeth, the raw edge of broken enamel. But being scared isn't the same as being weak. It's being human, and sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is speak the truth out loud, even when their whole body is shaking. What if they don't believe me? What if it happens again? What if they'll believe you, because this time you won't be standing alone. This time there'll be 13 other women standing right beside you. This time the evidence can't be denied. And this time, Bryn's voice hardened. This time I'll be there personally. I promise you that. Quiet on the line. So long that Bryn thought the call had dropped. Then Audrey's voice came back, still trembling, still scared. But underneath the fear, so faint you had to listen with your whole body to hear it, something else. Something that sounded like the first breath after nearly drowning. Okay, a shaky exhale. Okay, I'll do it. I'll testify. Bryn felt something shift in her chest. A knot that had been tightening for 7 days loosened half a turn. Thank you, Audrey. Don't thank me, a wet, shaky laugh. Thank you for being the person who finally came. Bryn closed her eyes. Those words, for being the person who finally came. They landed in the exact place where a 14-year-old girl was still waiting in a laundry room in Miami, still waiting for someone to open the door. The 48 hours crawled. Bryn spent them in a military medical facility getting her face rebuilt. The oral surgeon replaced the missing tooth with a temporary implant. The cracked one got a crown. The orbital bone fracture turned out to be a hairline. Painful, but stable. They taped her ribs, stitched a cut above her eyebrows she hadn't even noticed, and told her to rest for 2 weeks. She rested for 2 days. Then she called Thatcher. I need everything you have on Franklin Gage. It's already in your secure inbox. Thatcher didn't sound surprised. But Bryn, this is different from Ridgeline. Gage isn't a sergeant who kicks women in the face. He's a political animal. 30 years of building alliances. 30 years of knowing where the bodies are buried, sometimes literally. Then we take him down carefully. Read the files first. Then we'll talk strategy. The files painted a picture that made Bryn's stomach turn. Gage hadn't just protected Harker, he'd built the entire machine. Starting 30 years ago when he was a captain, Gage had identified promising young NCOs with the right combination of aggression and cruelty. He placed them in training positions where they had unchecked power over junior personnel. When complaints surfaced, Gage made them disappear. When investigations threatened, General Raymond Holt shut them down. When victims fought back, they were discredited, discharged, erased. Over 3 decades, Bryn counted 38 confirmed cases connected to the network. 38 women targeted, harassed, assaulted, silenced. 11 of them were dead. And at every critical juncture, every complaint, every investigation, every moment when the truth almost broke through, one man's name appeared. Franklin Gage, pulling strings, making calls, keeping the machine running. Ethan Caldwell called her on a Thursday afternoon. I heard you're still digging, he said. Word travels. His voice dropped. Bryn, there are rumors about you. They're saying you're unstable. that you're on a personal vendetta. Standard playbook, discredit the threat before the threat finds anything, which means you're getting close. Caldwell was quiet for a moment. I've been doing some digging of my own. Gage didn't just build the network. He tested the blueprint on his own unit. 30 years ago, 6 women filed harassment complaints. The investigation was buried. How do you know this? The silence that followed was heavy, loaded. Because one of those 6 women was my mother. Bryn felt the words hit like a physical impact. She never told me while she was alive, Caldwell continued. His voice was barely holding together. I found letters after she died. Letters she wrote to Gage begging him to reopen the investigation. Letters he never answered. He swallowed hard. She blamed herself for 20 years. She carried that shame until the day she died. Caldwell, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be relentless. His voice hardened. End him. I will, but I need more than old letters. I need something current. That's the other reason I called. I found someone inside Gage's own family who wants to help. Who? His granddaughter, Natalie Gage, 21 years old, just enlisted. Natalie Gage was nothing like Bryn expected. They met at a coffee shop in Arlington. Natalie was 21. Silver-streaked hair she'd clearly inherited from her grandfather. Confident bearing, steady eyes. But unlike the colonel, her eyes held something his never had. Something human. Thank you for meeting me, Bryn said. Thank you for giving me a chance to fix what my family broke. Natalie's hands were wrapped tight around her coffee cup. They hadn't stopped shaking since she sat down. When Ethan told me what my grandfather did, I didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. He was the one who taught me about honor, about duty. What changed your mind? The letters. Natalie's voice dropped to something just above a whisper. I found them in his study, hundreds of them, women writing to him, begging, pleading, asking for someone to listen. She stopped, pressed her lips together hard. He never answered a single one. He just collected them, like souvenirs. Where are those letters now? Natalie reached into her jacket, pulled out a flash drive, slid it across the table. I copied everything, names, dates, specific incidents. It goes back 30 years. Bryn took the drive carefully. This small piece of plastic held 3 decades of destroyed lives. This could end your family, Natalie. You understand that? My family ended the moment my grandfather decided those women's lives didn't matter. The tears spilled over. She wiped them away with the back of her hand. Angry tears, not sad ones. I joined the military because I believed in something. Because he taught me to believe in something. Honor, service, integrity. Her voice cracked. It was all a lie. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. Natalie met her eyes. I'd rather be the granddaughter who helped take him down than the one who helped him get away with it. The letters changed everything. They documented a systematic pattern of cover-up spanning 3 decades. But the most devastating piece of evidence was a memo. A single memo from 2004, written by Gage to General Raymond Holt. The women in this unit are becoming problematic. I recommend we implement the standard protocol. Transfer, discredit, silence. The usual remedies should be sufficient. Standard protocol. The usual remedies. They had turned predation into bureaucracy. They had turned the destruction of women's lives into a checklist. Bryn brought the evidence to Thatcher. The commander reviewed it in silence, her face growing paler with every page. This is explosive, Thatcher said finally, but we need someone inside the network. Someone who participated, someone willing to talk on the record. The answer came from the last place Bryn expected, Garrett Beckett, serving 8 years in a federal facility for his role in the Camp Ridgeline assaults. He requested a meeting. Every instinct told Bryn to refuse, but she needed information. He looked different than she remembered, thinner, hollowed out. The arrogance that had defined him at Ridgeline was gone, replaced by fear. Real, bone-deep fear.
You wanted to see me.
Bryn said. I want to make a deal. You already have a deal. 8 years instead of 20. I want a better one. Beckett leaned forward. His hands were cuffed to the table. They were shaking. I have information, everything. Names, dates, how the whole thing operates from the inside. Why should I believe you? Because I'm going to die in here. Beckett's voice was flat, empty. The network doesn't leave loose ends. 3 accidents in the past month.
Someone's trying to kill me.
You're saying someone's going to succeed soon, unless you're somewhere they can't reach. Beckett met her eyes. I'll give you everything, Castellano. Gage, Holt, the whole chain. Every dirty officer, every buried investigation. In exchange, I want protective custody and a reduced sentence. Bryn studied him, read him, peeled back every layer of his expression. He was a predator. That hadn't changed. But he was a predator who had become prey.
What do you have?
A server, encrypted, hidden, accessible only to network members. It has records going back 15 years. Every complaint that was buried, every victim who was paid off, every officer who was protected. It's all there. Where? I'll tell you when I have a deal, in writing. Bryn stood. I'll see what I can do. Castellano. His voice stopped her at the door. What? When you take them down, remember that in the end I helped. Bryn looked at him. Behind the fear and desperation, she saw shame, genuine shame. You didn't choose the right side, Beckett. You chose survival. There's a difference. The deal took 2 weeks. Beckett was transferred to federal protective custody. In exchange, he delivered everything. The server location, the access codes, the network's organizational chart. When the forensic team cracked the encryption, they found exactly what Beckett promised. 2,400 files spanning 22 years, a complete blueprint of institutional predation. And at the very top of the organizational structure, 2 names, Colonel Franklin Gage and General Raymond Holt. We have enough, Thatcher said. Then let's move. The moment we arrest Gage, his lawyers will activate. Holt will start making calls. We need to do this simultaneously. Every target, every location, all at once. How long? 3 weeks, maybe less. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you disappear. Thatcher's voice was firm. Gage knows you're coming. 3 weeks off the grid. When it's time to take them down, you'll be the first through the door. Bryn agreed. She spent the first 8 days in a safe house in West Virginia. No internet, no phone, no contact except daily check-ins through a secure channel. On the 9th day, her secure phone buzzed with a message that stopped her heart. Natalie Gage is missing. She called Thatcher immediately. She didn't report for duty 3 days ago. Her apartment is empty. Phone disconnected. He took her. We don't know. He found out she gave us the letters, and he took her. Bryn was already moving. Where was she last seen? Norfolk. Gage has a private property outside the city. Isolated, fenced, private security. Then that's where she is. If you do this, you're on your own. Natalie trusted me, Commander. She risked everything to help bring her own grandfather down. I am not going to sit in a safe house while she becomes another woman they bury. What if it's a trap? Bryn stopped at the door. Then they're going to find out they trapped something they can't handle. 18 hours later, she was outside Gage's property. She approached from the east, moving through darkness, silent, controlled, the way she'd moved through compounds in Afghanistan. 2 guards on the perimeter, private security. They moved with the lazy confidence of men who believed no one would be stupid enough to breach their line. They were wrong. Bryn slipped past both of them without displacing the air. She found Natalie in a basement that shouldn't have existed, bound to a chair, face swollen, lip split. 3 days of interrogation had left bruises across her arms, and a cut above her right eye. But her eyes, when they met Bryn's, were still burning. "I knew you'd come," Natalie whispered. "Can you walk?" "I think so." She winced as Bryn cut the restraints. "He's been questioning me, wants to know what I told you." "Did you tell him?" "I told him to go to hell." Natalie managed something between a laugh and a sob. "Family values, right?" Bryn helped her stand. "We need to move. Now." They made it 10 steps before the lights came on. Colonel Franklin Gage stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 men. At 61, he still carried himself with the rigid precision of a man who had commanded soldiers for 4 decades. Silver hair immaculate, eyes cold, the confidence of a man who had never been held accountable for anything. "Petty Officer Castellano," his voice was calm, measured. "I was hoping you'd come." Bryn pushed Natalie behind her. "Let us go, Colonel. It's over." "Over?" Gage almost laughed. "My dear, you've been busy, digging, asking questions, turning a female SEAL. You survived the same system you're trying to destroy. Doesn't that prove it works?" "It proves I was lucky. It proves I was strong enough to survive what should never have been inflicted." Bryn's hand moved toward her weapon. "And it proves the system needs to burn." "Take them both," Gage said to his men. "No witnesses." The first guard moved toward Natalie. Bryn moved faster. 2 shots. Both guards flanking Gage dropped. Clutching their shoulders, the remaining 2 hesitated. Fatal mistake. Bryn closed the distance in 2 strides. Joint lock on the first. His weapon clattered to the floor as he screamed. Precision strike to the second's temple. He went down like a power outage. 4 men, 5 seconds. Gage stood alone. "You can't shoot me." His voice wavered for the first time. "I'm unarmed." "I don't need to shoot you." Bryn stepped forward, and for the first time in 30 years, fear flickered across Franklin Gage's face. "I just need to keep you here for 3 more minutes." 3 minutes? What happens in 3 minutes? Bryn held up her phone. The screen glowed in the dim light. "I've been broadcasting this entire conversation to Commander Thatcher. She's been coordinating with the FBI since I crossed your fence line." Gage's face went gray. "That's entrapment. That's justice. Something you've been running from for 30 years. You don't understand. Holt, the Pentagon, the entire structure, they'll bury this. Maybe, but they won't bury the evidence. They won't bury the testimony, and they won't bury the 2,400 files on that server that document every crime you've ever committed." Gage lunged at her. Desperate, clumsy. Bryn sidestepped, caught his arm, put him face down on the concrete with a control hold that pressed his cheek into the cold floor. "You should have stayed behind your desk, Colonel. Field work isn't your strong suit." The FBI arrived 4 minutes later. They found Gage face down on concrete, 4 guards incapacitated, Natalie being treated by the medic Bryn had called, and Bryn Castellano standing in the center of it all. Blood on her knuckles, fire in her eyes, and a phone still streaming everything to a server that no amount of phone calls could erase. Special Agent Marcus Torres surveyed the room with raised eyebrows. "Commander Thatcher said you were effective. She didn't say you were terrifying. I adapt to circumstances." Bryn nodded toward Gage. "He's all yours." She walked toward Natalie. The young woman looked up at her approach, tears cutting tracks through the bruises on her face. "You came," Natalie said. "I wasn't sure you would. I made a promise." Bryn crouched beside her, took her hand. "What you did, stealing those letters, trusting a stranger, refusing to break, that took more courage than most people show in an entire lifetime." "I don't feel brave, I feel broken." "Those aren't mutually exclusive," Bryn squeezed her hand. "The bravest people I know are all a little broken. That's how the light gets in." Natalie managed a small, cracked smile. "Did you just quote Leonard Cohen?" "My foster neighbor did, Eleanor, one of the few good ones." Bryn stood. "You're going to be okay, Natalie. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you will." How do you know? Because you're a survivor, and survivors always find a way. The arrests happened simultaneously across 5 states. General Raymond Holt was taken into custody at his home in Virginia. Still in his bathrobe, his face a mask of disbelief. Colonel Gage was transported directly from his property to a federal detention center. 12 other officers connected to the network were arrested within the same 2-hour window. Not one of them had time to make a phone call. By morning, every news network in the country carried the same headline: Navy SEAL uncovers decades-long military abuse network. Bryn refused every interview request. She had done what she came to do. The rest belonged to the courts. The trials began 6 weeks later. Bryn had spent every day of those 6 weeks preparing. Not just her own testimony, that was the easy part. The hard part was the other women. 14 survivors who had spent years believing nobody would ever listen, convincing them to walk into a courtroom and say out loud what had been done to them in the dark. That was the real mission. Audrey Brennan flew in from Montana. She'd gained weight, cut her hair short. There was color in her face that hadn't been there 18 months ago. "You look different," Bryn said. "I feel different." Audrey sat down. Her hands were steady. "I stopped sleeping with the lights on last month. First time in 2 years. How does it feel?" "Terrifying," a small smile, "and amazing." One by one they came, 14 women, 14 stories, 14 lives that had been derailed by the same machine. Some were angry, some were terrified, some were both. All of them had spent years believing they were alone. All of them were discovering, some for the first time, that they weren't. The prosecution's case was devastating. Bryn was called first. She walked into the courtroom wearing her dress blues, her seal trident gleaming on her chest. Dominic Harker sat at the defense table. He was thinner, grayer. Prison had ground the arrogance down to something duller, meaner. When Bryn entered, his eyes tracked her across the room. She met his gaze and held it until he looked away. "Petty Officer Castellano," the prosecutor began, "please describe for the court what happened on the night of September 15th at Camp Ridgeline." "I was conducting an undercover investigation," Bryn said. "On September 15th, Sergeant Harker kicked me in the face with enough force to knock out my front tooth, crack another, and fracture my orbital bone." "And what preceded this assault?" 7 days of systematic harassment, intimidation, and abuse. My equipment was sabotaged. My sleep was disrupted. I was cornered in a hallway by Staff Sergeant Beckett and threatened with sexual assault. "Objection!" Harker's attorney was on his feet. "Overruled. Continue." Bryn continued. She described everything: the arrival, the isolation, the escalating abuse, the sabotaged rope, Ethan Caldwell's warning, Beckett's whispered threat, the final confrontation, the kicks, the reveal. She kept her voice level, her facts precise, her emotions locked behind a door she'd learned to build a long time ago. When she finished, the prosecutor asked one question that silenced the room. "Petty Officer Castellano, why did you allow the assault to happen? You had the training and ability to defend yourself from the first day. Why did you let Sergeant Harker kick you in the face?" Bryn was quiet for 3 seconds. The courtroom held its breath. "Because I needed evidence that couldn't be denied," she said. "Because every woman who came before me reported what happened through proper channels and was dismissed, discredited, erased. The system that was supposed to protect them was the system protecting their abusers." She paused. "I let Harker assault me so that there would be no doubt, no ambiguity, no room for anyone to look the other way. Not this time." "And was it worth it?" Bryn looked at the gallery. 14 women sat together in the second and third rows. Some were holding hands. Some were crying. All of them were there. "Ask them," Bryn said. The defense tried everything: character attacks, procedural challenges, claims of entrapment. None of it worked. The evidence was a wall. 7 days of continuous footage, 14 victim testimonies, 2,400 files from the encrypted server, communications between officers spanning 2 decades. Audrey testified on day 4. She walked to the witness stand with her chin up and her hands steady, and told a courtroom full of strangers what Dominic Harker had done to her 9 months ago. She described the harassment, the escalation, the night Beckett cornered her, the complaint she filed, the 3 days of silence, the medical discharge that arrived like a death sentence. They told me I was unstable, Audrey said. They told me I was lying. They told me I should be grateful they weren't pressing charges against me for filing a false report. And how did that make you feel? Like I was disappearing. Audrey's voice held steady, but tears ran freely down her face. Like I was being erased from the world one piece at a time. My name, my career, my service record, everything I'd worked for, gone, because I told the truth. And yet you're here today, because somebody finally believed me. Audrey looked at Bryn. Because one woman walked into that facility and did what I couldn't do alone. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty, all counts. Dominic Harker was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 15. The courtroom erupted, not in cheers, in something quieter than that, in exhalations, in sobs, in the sound of 14 women releasing a breath they'd been holding for years. As the guards led Harker away, he passed within 3 feet of Bryn. He stopped, turned his head. Their eyes met for the last time. "You destroyed my life," he whispered. "No, Dominic." Bryn's voice was calm, final. "You destroyed your own life. I just made sure someone was watching." He was gone. Bryn never saw him again. The other verdicts came one by one over the following weeks. General Raymond Holt, guilty on all counts, 30 years. Colonel Franklin Gage, guilty on all counts, life without parole. 12 other officers received sentences ranging from 8 to 25 years. The network that had operated for 3 decades was destroyed. Completely, permanently. The day after the final verdict, Thatcher called. "The Navy wants to give you a medal." "I don't want a medal." "Then what do you want, Bryn?" The question sat in the air between them. Bryn closed her eyes. She thought about Ridgeline, about the concrete floor and the taste of blood. She thought about Audrey hiding in Montana, sleeping with the lights on. She thought about Natalie, beaten in her own grandfather's basement. She thought about the 14 women who sat in a courtroom and spoke the truth out loud for the first time in their lives. She thought about 2,400 files, and all the files she hadn't found yet, all the networks she hadn't mapped, all the women she hadn't reached. "I want to build something," she said. "What kind of something?" "A program. Investigators who can go undercover in toxic environments and document what's really happening. Not just military, everywhere. Corporations, institutions, any place where people with power use it to destroy people without power." "That's ambitious." "It's necessary," Bryn's voice hardened. "We caught one network, Commander. One. But there are more. Right now, right this minute, there's a woman somewhere being targeted by someone who thinks he's untouchable. And she's being told she's lying. She's being told she's crazy. And I want to be the person who shows up for her. I want to build an army of people who show up. Survivors who became fighters. People who can walk into a hostile environment and take it apart from the inside." Thatcher was quiet for a long time. "I'll make some calls. The Navy owes you. If anyone can make this happen, it's you." "Thank you, Commander." "Don't thank me yet. Building something from scratch is harder than tearing something down." "I know," Bryn almost smiled, "but I've never been afraid of hard." That night, she drove to the cemetery where Eleanor Whitmore was buried. Eleanor hadn't been her birth mother, hadn't been her legal guardian, hadn't been anything the system would recognize on paper. She'd been a 63-year-old woman who lived next door to Bryn's last group home in Miami. A woman who noticed a 16-year-old girl sitting on the front steps every night, staring at nothing, and decided to do something about it. Eleanor was the one who brought her food when the group home forgot, who taught her to cook, who sat on the porch and talked until the shaking stopped, who looked at a girl the entire world had written off and said 5 words that changed the trajectory of a life. "You are not broken, child." And when Bryn told her, on a night so hot the air itself seemed to sweat, what the older boy had done in the laundry room, Eleanor didn't ask if she was sure, didn't ask what she was wearing. Eleanor took her hands and held them and said, "I believe you. I believe every word, and I'm going to teach you something." "What?" "You are not broken, child. You're just learning how to get up. Every time they knock you down, you get up. You hear me? Every single time. Because one day they're going to get tired of knocking, and you'll still be standing." Eleanor had died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Quick. Painless. The kind of death that good people deserve but rarely got. Bryn had been deployed in Syria when it happened. Hadn't made it back for the funeral. Had carried that guilt like a stone in her chest ever since. She stood by the grave now, evening air cool against the bruises that still hadn't fully healed. "I got up, Eleanor." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Every time, just like you taught me." She placed a single white orchid on the headstone, Eleanor's favorite. "I'm going to build something now, something that helps people like me, people who got hurt and had nobody to turn to, people who screamed and nobody came." Her voice cracked, just slightly, just enough. "I wish you could see it. I wish you could see who I became." Wind moved through the trees, gentle, almost warm, almost like a hand brushing her cheek. Bryn stood there for a long time, remembering the woman who had saved her without even knowing she'd done it. Remembering lessons that had carried her through buds, through combat, through 7 days of hell at Camp Ridgeline, through everything. Then she turned and walked back to her car. There was work to do. 2 years passed, 730 days of building something from nothing. Bryn Castellano stood in front of her first graduating class and felt something she hadn't felt since Eleanor Whitmore's porch in Miami. Pride. Not the military kind, not medals and salutes. The quiet kind, the kind that starts in the chest and spreads outward like warmth from a fire you built with your own hands. 12 investigators sat before her. 6 months of the hardest training she could design. Surveillance techniques, undercover protocols, evidence collection, legal frameworks, and the thing no manual could teach. The ability to walk into a room full of predators, look them in the eye, and let them believe they were the dangerous ones. Audrey Brennan sat in the front row. She was unrecognizable from the woman who'd answered a phone in Montana 2 years ago with a voice like a ghost. Her posture was straight. Her eyes were clear. She'd stopped sleeping with the lights on. She'd started using her real name again. "You've completed the most difficult training program I could build," Bryn began. "You've learned to infiltrate hostile environments without being detected. You've learned to document abuse in real time. You've learned to survive situations designed to break you." She paused, looked at each of them. "But I want to tell you something that isn't in any training manual. This work will cost you. It will cost you sleep. It will cost you peace. Some nights you'll lie awake wondering if any of it matters." She touched her jaw. The implant where her missing tooth had been felt smooth under her tongue. "But it will also give you something most people spend their whole lives looking for. Purpose. The knowledge that every predator you expose, every victim you give a voice to, every broken system you force to change, it ripples outward into lives you'll never know about." Natalie Gage raised her hand. She joined the program 3 months after the trials ended. The granddaughter who'd betrayed her own blood to do what was right. "How do we know when we've done enough?" Natalie asked. "When do we stop?" Bryn looked at her. "You don't stop. You can't. Because the moment you stop, someone else starts suffering in silence." Her voice softened. But you learn to pace yourself. You learn to celebrate small victories. And you learn to lean on each other. Because this work is too heavy to carry alone. The graduation was simple. No medals, no fanfare. Handshakes and the quiet weight of completion. Afterward, Audrey found Bryn standing alone by the door. "I can't believe I'm here," Audrey said. Her eyes were bright. "2 years ago, I was hiding from my own shadow, and now I'm ready to help someone else find their way out." "Because of you," Audrey's voice cracked. "You didn't just save me, Bryn. You showed me how to save myself, and now I get to do that for other people." "That's the whole point," Bryn pulled her into a hug. "That's the legacy we're building. Not monuments. People. People who take what happened to them and turn it into something that keeps others from going through the same thing." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "My name is Sarah. I'm 19, stationed at Fort Benning. My commanding officer has been... I don't know who else to call. I heard about what you did. Can you help me?" Bryn stared at the message, felt the familiar weight settling onto her shoulders. The weight she'd carried from Miami to Ridgeline to courtrooms to this moment. She typed back, "I know you're scared. I was scared too, but you're not alone anymore. Tell me everything, and I'll show you how to fight back." The response came in seconds. "How do you know I can fight back?" Bryn smiled, felt Eleanor's voice in her ear, felt the 14-year-old girl in the laundry room finally quiet. "Because you already started. You reached out. You refused to stay silent. The hardest part is behind you. Everything else we face together." She looked up. Audrey was watching her. "New case?" Audrey asked. "New case. Then let's get to work." Bryn Castellano had walked into Camp Ridgeline wearing a lie. She had let Dominic Harker kick her teeth out. She had bled on concrete while men laughed. And then she had risen. She exposed a network that had operated for 3 decades. She put a general and a colonel behind bars. She built a program that stretched across the country. But more than any of that, she had become the person who came. For Audrey, for Natalie, for the 14 women who testified, for Sarah at Fort Benning, for every woman who would ever scream into the void and need someone to answer. The mission would never be over. There would always be another predator, another victim, another fight. But Bryn Castellano wasn't fighting alone anymore, and neither was anyone else.